Hi, everyone. This is Lauren Baker from Search Engine Journal. Welcome to today's Search Engine Journal webinar, SEJ webinar, brought to you by our partners at Conductor. Today, I have Nathan Endres with me, the Senior SEO Analyst at Conductor, and we're going to be talking optimizing for Google's new landscape, which seems to be ever-changing day by day, and the future of search. I'm going to go through some housekeeping, and we're going to have a quick poll before we get started. But Nate, I'm going to give you a chance to say hello.
Hey everyone, I'm Nathan Endres at Conductor. I've been doing SEO for about 13 years now, based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. So seen a lot of changes in the search landscape and looking forward to talking through them with you all.
Awesome. We're really looking forward to it. So just to let everyone know, from a housekeeping perspective, we do have, you'll see a little chat box. So we like to ask people to just kind of chime in and let us know where you're coming in from, whether it's somewhere in North America, Europe, Asia, wherever it may be. Just chime in with a city or country. It's always cool to see where everyone's coming in from these webinars. Also, you'll see that underneath your presentation there's some emojis. That's always fun to have. That way, if you really agree or you want to celebrate something that Nate's presenting, you can go ahead and hit the smiley face, hit the heart, hit the raise the roof, or the hands, whatever you want to do. That way we know that you're enjoying everything on your end. Speaking of chat and everything else, we also have Q&A at the end of today's presentation. So what we ask is that while Nate's presenting, please feel free to ask questions within the question box under Q&A. And then what we'll be doing is going through them at the end of the presentation during the Q&A session and picking out some of the most relevant and best questions for Nate to go ahead and answer. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of them today, especially with everything going on with Google, AI, Google Shopping, this and that. So lots on the horizon in terms of changes of search. And I'm really looking forward to hearing and seeing what you have to present today, Nate. And then speaking of chat, interactivity, whatever it may be, we're also going to launch a poll before we get started. So usually we do these during the presentation, but we're going to do this one right now. So, and we like to get everybody answering, so get ready. I'm going to start the poll right now. What concerns you most about your future SEO success? Is it A, AI and its application in search results? B, the rise of the clickless SERP and interactive search results? C, increasing localization and personalization in search? D, higher standards for content quality and authorship? Or E, measuring and communicating success in a changing search landscape? So please take the time to answer this question. Like I said, we'd like to get everyone answering. So if you haven't done it yet, go ahead and do so. Nate, what are your thoughts on future SEO success?
Well, I think in general, I'm most interested in kind of the rise of the clickless SERP, which I think all of these sort of, filter into that and contribute to that. But I think that's been a big challenge for a lot of my clients is one, how do we measure success in kind of a changing landscape where we might not just be driving the same amount of traffic as we were in the past? And it might be hard to get back to that level of traffic just with the way the SERP is structured, with the way people interact. So, I don't think that means obviously SEO is less relevant now than it was before. It just means the way we think about it has changed. And like I said, I think AI and Google Shopping and local results and personalization, they all kind of contribute to that. But I just see Google creating a more and more interactive SERP where they're trying to keep people engaged in their search result. Obviously, they're a business too, and that contributes directly to their bottom line. So,
and then, funny enough, even before you said that, we already had the majority of our audience vote for the rise of the clickless SERP and interactive search results with 35%. 30% have come in with AI and its application in search results, which is something that I can see being a big concern moving forward. Also, measuring and communicating success in a changing search landscape, all connected, like you said. And then higher standards for content quality and authorship coming in a little bit lower at 5%, and then at 4% increasing localization and personalization. So, those are the results so far. You can craft everything as much as you want to as we're presenting. And I'm going to hand things off to you.
Yeah. Okay. We'll jump in. So you did a good job of introducing me. Like I said, 13 years in SEO. Grew up in Wisconsin, so I'm a Packer fan living in enemy territory. But have lived here a long time and been in the SEO game for quite a while at this point. So we'll jump into just an agenda. We're going to look at the evolving search landscape, navigating kind of these different features, AI, the interactive SERP, and then applying kind of a strategy to that. So, how are we creating user-focused and intent-driven content with these new standards? Building a solid SEO foundation to place this content on, and then just, obviously a summary and questions here at the end. So like I was saying, I think really a great way to think about or anticipate changes in search is understanding Google as a business first and foremost. And obviously their updates are made to deliver a better user experience. They're made to, create better search results for people. But there's also the end goal as a business to keep users engaged in their search results longer. That's how they can sell more advertising. And I think a lot of these updates, obviously the user is the focus, but the end goal there is to keep the user in the search longer. And how do we, as people doing SEO with our own websites who want to drive traffic to our websites, how do we fit into this new landscape where Google is kind of prioritizing itself over us to some extent? So AI is certainly going to change the search landscape. It's going to change how people ask questions. I think it changes the way we think about keywords in terms of long tail versus short tail, more, kind of conversational language versus, buttoned up singular keywords. The quality of answers is changing. And I think that's good and bad. I think the end goal is we're delivering more quality, higher quality, refined, personalized answers. But in these early stages, I think we've also seen those places where the answers kind of don't meet the standard that we're looking for. Even outside of the search engine where people are searching is changing. Chat GPT, chat bots, where we can just plug in an answer or plug in a question, get an answer back. That's obviously changing how much traffic we're getting, and especially on those informational type queries, what opportunity we have. And then how people make content. And a lot of that has to do with AI entering into the landscape, but also kind of the double-edged sword of it. Google is using AI to deliver results, but they're also in a way penalizing websites using AI to create content at scale. I mean, it's always that constant refining process of trying to remove that, kind of once spammy type of just put content on a page style content creation, moving that out of the ecosystem. So, three ways that AI is enhancing search. We're looking at those AI snapshots, which act a lot like a quick answer, but they're a little bit longer form. We're pulling from multiple sources. There's, direction or action the user can take out of those. Conversational mode and vertical experiences, where Google is really trying to anticipate, okay, if you ask this question, you probably also care about these questions. You probably are trying to take an action like this, trying to anticipate what action users are trying to take out of their question and give them a path to keep interacting with the search engine. So before generative search, I think this is just a good example of, like I was saying about quick answers, we look at this Bryce Canyon screenshot, the number one ranked result. We're right at the top of the page. We've got our people also ask box, but we're right up there. Now with that generative search experience, we're pushed much further down the page. And what does that mean for our click-through rates? What does that mean for traffic? What does that mean for, how we're driving qualified users to our website? I think there's still a lot of questions about that. We're obviously in the early stages, but we can make some educated guesses about what that might mean. So in May 2024, Google rolled out the expanded AI overview to all US users, and they display similar to quick answers. So they compile those answers from sources. They link to sources on the right-hand bar, kind of in a similar way, a little bit to the quick answer form. Google is claiming that these learn more links generate clicks at a higher rate than a traditional search result. I think we're still in the early enough stages where it's hard for me to say that's 100% true. Obviously, I think they would love for everyone to believe that. I think we're going to have to keep gathering data and looking as this becomes a more concrete part of search and shows up for more queries, what that actually means. But that's kind of the company talking line right now is, hey, we know we're doing this, but you're actually going to get more clicks if you can show up there. I think the thing left out a little bit is there's a more limited number of results that are showing there. We've got one or two. So I think showing up in those positions is going to be more important than ever, as opposed to kind of when we think about a traditional result where you might have 3 or 4 results above, the fold, and you're getting that click through spread out a little bit more across those results. It's far from a finished product. So Google rolled it out and then drew it back a little bit because people were finding, I think there was a Neil Armstrong brought a cat on the moon. There was this really famous one of how much glue should you put on pizza. And I think what it was doing was it was pulling from like an article about, people putting glue on a piece of pizza to shoot it for advertisement. There's all these weird ways they make food look more appetizing for photos. But I think that is a good illustration of kind of some of the limitations of AI right now. Its goal is to completely understand human language, human nuance, context, and it's just not there yet. It's not completely there. Obviously, this one I think is a little bit like, you search the query, how much glue to put on pizza. Is that really a query a lot of people are searching on? But it is illustrative of some of the limitations right now. And I think, we're going to see that and have to navigate that moving forward. By the same token, just because they rolled it back now doesn't mean it's not going to be part of the future. And it's only going to expand as they tweak that algorithm and get a little bit better at generating better results. So I think, too, beyond just AI, Google's efforts to keep users in the SERP is constantly evolving and changing. And a lot of, like I was saying up front, a lot of the updates that they're making, obviously, it's to deliver a more personalized, better search experience, but it's also to keep them within their search engine. So personalization and localization, this has been a big part of search for a while. It's not new. But I think it's expanded in its scope. I've seen more queries, more general queries, driving, producing localized results. The whole personalization side, if somebody's logged in, we're using your search behavior to deliver a different set of results for you based on your behavior than we're delivering to someone else. And I think that makes it a little bit harder to track our progress, right? It's not as simple as being like, hey, we rank number 1 for this, or even we rank number 1 for this in, Google New York, Google Chicago, whatever. Because we have to understand that everybody is probably seeing something a little different based on their search behavior, what they've interacted with in the past. But I think it's creating this landscape where some of these competitors that we might not have thought of as our traditional online competitors in the past, now they are part of the landscape, and we have to think about them. Even if we're not directly competing with them, we are competing with them within the search landscape. Shoppable results. As a guy who works on a lot of e-commerce sites, this has been huge for behavior and where we're seeing traffic land on our website. Really, they're trying to create an almost on-site experience in the SERP. You're able to browse, filter, just like a faceted navigation page, category page you might have on your e-commerce website. Now users are able to do all of that within the SERP. And they're able to comparison shop with you and your competitors in a way that's, more direct than maybe it was in the past, where some of those kind of traditional marketing factors are coming in more to play. What is your pricing? What are your reviews like? Obviously, all of those things contribute to your organic visibility, but I think just user behavior is being impacted by that. And what we've seen too is, in the past where maybe our most important landing page was our general like basketball shoes category level page. Now, a lot of those general queries or high level broader queries, we might be getting more landings on our product pages and optimizing those product pages, optimizing Merchant Center, our product feed. That's just so much more important now because these are increasingly becoming the landing pages people are landing on, even for top level queries like basketball shoes, that we thought a category page was going to be more of what we were optimizing for that. And then interactive SERP features, flights, hotels, all of that. have been out for a while. We've seen how that same kind of idea as shopping. But I think it's just good to keep in mind that I would expect these things to expand. I would expect more things moving forward, whether it's like scheduling an appointment or buying tickets for other things. Just rolling out a more interactive SERP where people are able to take action directly within search results. And, obviously that's going to cut into the number of visitors that are actually getting to your website in the end. If we're still getting that conversion, that's the ultimate goal. But that goes back to, how do we measure success? How do we think about the landscape as a whole when we're communicating why we're doing SEO and why it's important? So, questions I'm sure you have, we've touched on a little bit. Is my organic traffic going to go down? Should I still care about keywords? Should I still be tracking keywords, mapping keywords to pages? How is personalization going to impact my brand showing up? If I'm only showing up 50% of the time for a query that I was showing up for 80% of the time before, what does that mean for me and my bottom line? I think the impact on organic search certainly is going to have a negative impact on top ranking pages and just their ability to drive traffic. Now, Google is saying we're having a higher click-through rate on some of those queries. Like I said, I don't know if I 100% believe that, but I think we've already seen that with even just as more search moves to mobile and those top 3 positions become that much more important. The rise of the clickless SERP, quick answers, we've kind of been seeing this trend for a while. So ranking in position 1 might not have the same level of impact it did now as it did 4 years ago, even if the search volume is higher, just because we're getting less of a click-through rate on those results. Ranking within that SGE presence is going to be that much more important. If it's taking up basically the entire search, especially on a mobile device, ranking in those 2, 3, whatever side links that go with the AI overview is going to be that much more important, especially if what Google's saying is true and the lion's share of clicks are going to those results. And then I think the rise of this natural language, conversational language, longer tail searches, that's going to change how we think about search volume. It's always been a balance of looking at search volume plus intent plus, hey, what drives relevant traffic? But maybe some of those searches where we kind of put them to the side, they get 10 monthly searches. We don't think about that. Maybe there's more value in those now. And especially when we think about ranking more for a topic than ranking for individual keywords, because as Google's algorithm gets better at understanding language, what we should see is the ability for one page to rank for a variety of queries that are all kind of touching on the same thing, right? Google's going to do a better job of understanding, hey, this is one way to ask the question. Here's another way to ask the question. But the user is looking for a similar or the same answer for both of these. And this page is doing the best job of answering that question. So different landing pages on your site taking on added impact, I think, is going to be huge. Like I was saying, with the product pages being a more important landing page than they maybe were in the past, where we thought, hey, product pages drive traffic when they search for a specific product. Now they're driving traffic on those general type of queries: basketball shoes, hiking boots. So having those optimized product pages is going to be that much more important. Understanding what are the most important landing pages on your site, I think that's changed since 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever. That mix is going to change, and your priority of what pages need to be optimized is going to change. Your competitor mix is going to change. Like I was saying, you're going to have offline, online competitors. You're going to have content creators in there. We're seeing a lot more Reddit, a lot more like message boards, things like that. Obviously, they might not be a direct competitor in terms of selling a product or service that you're selling, but they're going to be a direct competitor in terms of taking up real estate in the search landscape. And then the keyword mix that you have. Those top level general queries, maybe you drove a lot of traffic on those in the past. They weren't always the highest converting. Now it's that much harder to rank for those. So is it important to change your focus now to, hey, maybe we're going to get a little less traffic on these keywords, but they're going to be more qualified visitors. We're going to get more revenue out of that. And it's going to be worth more of our effort, because we're going to have a better shot at actually ranking for these keywords than chasing just the highest volume, broadest keywords that align to our space. So I think to summarize all of this is to fear not. This is not the first time changes in the SERP have caused people to think, is SEO dead? I think there's an article about it every single year. Google, Panda, voice search, I've been doing this since like 2012. I think SEO has been dead 7 or 8 times in that period. So I think the fear of SEO not meaning anything anymore, that's not true. It's just what our focus is changing, how we adapt. It's like anything. You just have to adapt your strategy to it and understand, how to communicate that change to higher ups who might not be as in tune with what is going on in the SERP. So, like I was saying, the interactive SERP isn't the end of SEO. It's just going to change what we prioritize and how we measure success. And we'll jump into a little bit of that here. So, key moving forward, just at a high level before we jump in, I think specificity is going to be key moving forward. You're not trying to create this general content stuff keywords. You're trying to answer very specific questions. You're trying to answer those specific questions that really align to the service or product that you're selling, and you're answering those questions in a robust way. You're checking all the boxes. It's not just an overview. You're providing kind of a one-stop shop to answer those questions. Authorship, just the higher levels of content creation, the higher standard for content creation that I think Google is applying. It's going to be so important to know where the source of your information is coming from, and making that key to users and search engines if you want to rank, especially in extremely competitive fields where, we have kind of a high barrier to entry already. And then thinking about real estate and not just rankings. Like I was saying, it's not just about ranking number 1, number 2, number 3. It's about, are you showing up in as many places as possible? Because the SERP is structured more almost like a newspaper page than just a list of results on a page. So are you showing up in all the places you can show up? Obviously, there are going to be some result types that if you don't have a local presence, you're not going to be showing up in local search. But are you checking all the boxes for those result types that do apply to you? And are you showing up as frequently as possible? So jumping into content, Google, this has been, what they've been working on forever, but I think it's just accelerating, is just better decoding search intent, better understanding human language, better understanding when somebody asks a question, and when this specific person asks a question, what are they actually looking for? What are they trying to answer? So Google had that August 2024 core algorithm update. I think they've had like 2 big core algorithm updates, the 2 last August, 2023 and 2024. And it was really focused around that attempt to understand search intent. So using all of those context clues to do a better job of serving relevant results, your past search behavior, your location, freshness, I think that's going to be an increasingly important thing as we see, more news results or message boards or forums in the search result is, if you searched hurricane last week, you were going to get a bunch of news about the hurricane in Florida, as opposed to the general Wikipedia article about hurricanes. So thinking about that, do some of the topics that apply to my website have a freshness component to that, and meeting that need when appropriate. And then that higher standard for content in terms of just basically spam prevention. And that's where this authorship thing comes into place. So in March 2024, Google rolled out that low quality content and manipulative practice updates. They've been devaluing this stuff for a long time, but it's just getting better and better at devaluing it. And like I was saying, I think it's a little bit kind of Google do as I say, not as I do to some extent. And they're using AI to deliver results, but they don't want a bunch of people just generating AI content at scale at throwing it on your website. It should be user-focused content. And when you think about it, it's pretty understandable why. Like, you probably don't want to read it, and anybody can do that. Anybody can and plug a prompt into, ChatGPT, take the output, throw it on a page and say, hey, this is our content. That's not going to be a big differentiator. All your competitors can do that too. So I think it's using AI when appropriate, but it's still going to be about creating user-focused, written for human content, and Google's going to continue to prioritize that over just getting words on a page. So EAT, you're probably all somewhat familiar with this. I think it was EAT for a while. Now it's EEAT, but experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And what this all boils down to is basically, how does Google understand where this information you're providing is coming from? How does it vet it as good information? And when it can vet it and be like, yes, this is authoritative, trustworthy content, where it will rank it in search results. So I think this is especially important. I think this is important in every area, but I think it's especially important in highly regulated fields. I like to think of them as your money, your life type queries. So finance, healthcare, real estate, some of these like major life choices that you're making, the standard for the content that's going to show there is going to be higher moving forward, just because wrong information in those areas is going to have a bigger impact than, hey, if somebody gives you some wrong information about what basketball shoes to buy. So I think especially in those fields, thinking about EAT moving forward is going to be extremely important. So assessing your content for EAT, I think, we think about the foundational elements of how well your page is optimized, but also just, I think, thinking more, just being more thoughtful about why you're creating this content, who you're creating for the content for, and who is the person providing the content. So does this content serve a purpose? How was it created? If you can provide details about, where is this content coming from? Not only the author, but hey, if we're citing statistics, how did we gather those statistics? What are we citing? And then thinking about just why it was created. And it should be created primarily to help users. I know, that's very general, and our end goal is we're all thinking about how do we actually show up and how do we drive traffic. But we should be putting content on the site that serves a purpose for users, because that's going to rank better anyway. It's going to have better engagement. And hopefully it's going to lead to our ultimate goal, which is getting the person to take the action that we want them to take. So when we're thinking about content, I really like to think about, I think in the future and now, just ranking for topics instead of ranking for individual keywords. It's not just about, hey, we rank in the top position for these 10 keywords. These are our 10 bellwether keywords. I don't think it hurts to have bellwether keywords that you're using as kind of a directional, hey, we want to make sure we're keeping our rankings for these. But we really want to rank for a whole range of keywords around the topic that is important to us. And that means having informational content for those high funnel users, consideration content for somebody kind of moving through the funnel, and then that transactional content at the end, which, might be, hey, a well-optimized product page with all the details that we need on it. So having content at each stage of the journey and thinking more in a holistic topic-based way around content creation than just like, hey, we want to rank for winter boots. Let's make a page about winter boots. Okay, what are all the things that matter about winter boots? Selecting them and, sizing and all of that. Do we have that content? Do we also have the content that, helps somebody buy a pair of winter boots at the end of the funnel? Thinking about it in that way, rather than just one page equals one keyword or even 5 keywords that we've mapped out, thinking about, do I have a range of pages that help me rank for a specific topic? So lower search volume doesn't always mean less value. And I think we've known that, but I think moving forward in this kind of specificity era and this personalization era, our keyword targeting is going to be more about relevancy than necessarily just volume. If you have a keyword that gets 100 visits, but only 10 of those are qualified, it really doesn't have the same value to you as a keyword that generates 20 visits, but all 20 are qualified. So I think a lot of this boils down to how you communicate success, up the chain, of just saying, hey, yes, we're getting less traffic. We're maybe not ranking as highly for these kind of vanity glamour keywords, but look at this whole range of keywords that we're ranking for and driving traffic on that is more relevant, that has a higher conversion rate. So it's even thinking about the volume of keywords that you rank for as much as how highly do you rank for like the individual top level vanity keywords. Do you have a broad keyword base that you're pulling traffic in? And as users are asking those questions in a more conversational way, I just think we're going to see an expanded base in terms of the number of keywords that drive traffic. And I think that presents challenges for companies like Conductor too, is how do we aggregate that data? How do we pull in those rankings and those search volumes, and make sure that we're providing information about those types of keywords, because they're only going to be more important moving forward. And then, like I was saying, thinking about real estate, not just individual rankings. It's more about how much space you occupy in the SERP than just your individual ranking list. So are you showing up in the product feed? Do you then have a regular result? If you have locations, are you showing up in the local pack? And you're going to have to make some adjustments based on that too. I work with companies that they're all online, and a lot of their queries are generating local results, not even, queries that might not have generated local results in the past. Now they are, and that has a huge impact. So we know, hey, we're not going to be able to open up a brick and mortar store and compete in this space. So it becomes that much more important to show up in these other areas, and then prioritizing those, understanding and communicating that to leaders. Hey, we're seeing a lot of local search here. We don't have locations, but here's what we can do. Here's an alternative. Here's how we can try to make up for that traffic. We can show up more in the product feeds. We can try to show up for more informational queries. It's a way of trying to make up for those places where you just have the challenge of you're not going to be able to compete based on how your business is structured. And then authorship, like I was saying, this is something I've been working with a lot of my clients on, because I think in the past it was like, get a blog up there, get a piece of content up there. We don't have an author, but hey, we did it. We've got some H2s on the page, we're ready to roll. And I think the source of information has become that much more important, especially in those areas like I was talking about, those highly considered your money, your life type queries. So, who is the person? Why are they an expert? Why should we care about what they're saying? And we can send those signals in a variety of ways, creating an author page and linking to it, linking to a LinkedIn profile, using author schema. It's really just establishing why your content should be respected by users and search engines. So one thing I've been working on with clients too is trying to involve other people in the content creation process. You have maybe you have one person that does content, or a blog writer that writes all your blogs. But you're an e-commerce site. Like, can you get buyers involved in it? Can you get the person who's procuring hiking boots to be like, hey, maybe they don't need to write the article from scratch, but can they come in, vet it, add information where necessary, and provide their name as the author of that content? I think trying to involve more people in your company in the content creation side is going to be that much more important, because that allows you to pull experts in, show your expertise, show that your information is coming from a variety of sources. It's not just somebody cranking out blog posts in a vacuum. I think that's going to be really important, is thinking about content creation as like a company-wide initiative, and not just like, hey, we've got a content writer, go out there and write content for SEO. And then pruning low quality content. So, Google has taken action. If you've done spammy or automated content creation in the past, maybe it's time to remove it. It's not always going to be like, hey, they're going to come in and penalize you directly. I've seen some of those manual penalties, and they're terrible and really hard to come back from. But I also think, like, from my experience, a lot of that content probably never got that much traction in the first place in this new landscape. It might have 5-10 years ago. I remember when I first started, people, the content we were putting out there on like guest blog websites and spinning content where it's like written 9 different ways, but it's the same stuff. That hasn't worked in a long time. But I think it's continuing to think about why you're creating content. And if you've got kind of some of that spammy stuff, it's probably not generating traffic for you anyway. Might as well go through and prune it. I think looking back at the content you have and assessing it and saying, hey, does this content meet the needs of the search now? And either removing it or updating it. And I always love being able to update content, because you might have some stuff that was well written and it did serve you well. It's not spammy, not automated content. It's slowly lost visibility over time. It's not meeting the needs of users. But hey, you still got that URL. You still have some equity on that page. Can we leverage that moving forward by going in there, updating the content, adding different content types, whether it's video, tables, different things, trying to use as much of that content as possible if you can. And if you can't, removing it and, starting from scratch. But I always like to, if I can, leverage some of the equity that we've built on a page, do that. And that kind of leads into the reviewing low performing content too. If you're seeing content die off, you're seeing something that used to generate traffic in the past slowly kind of fade away, going in and looking at it and saying, hey, do we really need this piece of content anymore? One, does this align to, our audience? And if it does, updating it, getting it into a better place, and leveraging maybe the existing equity that it has and trying to move it back up the ladder. So when doing that, I think the best step for content creation is just looking at what's ranking in the SERP. And maybe that seems extremely simple, but it's going to be our best insight into what Google and what users value, is looking at what is being valued right now. What questions are people asking? What are they answering? And what websites, whether they be competitor sites, whether they be content sites, what other sites are doing it really well and ranking well, and we're seeing them frequently. So, what does the content cover? What questions is it answering? How long is it? What is its audience? How is the metadata optimized? I think thinking about different content types as well. Are we seeing more video for these types of queries? Are we seeing tables, numbered lists, structuring it in a way that makes it easy to digest for the user and easy to digest for search engines? So I think whenever you're asking those questions of like, okay, I know I want to rank for this topic. I know it's important. Where do I start? A great first place to start is looking at what's ranking for some of the keywords that align to that topic, and then not copying it, but using it as kind of a blueprint for, or even just a benchmark of like, hey, if I'm going to rank here, I need to create content that's at least this good, or ideally better, ideally at a higher level than this. It's just Google's never going to give us away the complete algorithm answers to everything. So we kind of have to be detectives and look at, hey, what is ranking well is probably our best insight into what's being valued. So pillars of quality content, just educating your users. Like I said, thinking about, when we're thinking about content, obviously we want to rank for keywords, we want to drive traffic, but asking yourself, what purpose is this serving for my users? Being specific. Specificity is going to be key moving forward. Being comprehensive, answering all the questions. I think sometimes you talk with content creators on websites, or and they're like, oh, this seems really long. This seems really, intense. Like, can we pare this down? There's some occasions where that might be true, but there's also, if you're looking in the SERP and you're seeing longer content, longer form content rank, that's probably what users are looking for. These are the questions they have, and they want comprehensive content to answer those questions. Trying to use authorship whenever you can. Like I was saying, involving more people in the content creation process, leveraging your experts, bringing them into that process, and then using their name and their expertise as a way to establish trust. And then adopting an always-on mindset. It's all about reporting, thinking of, automating your reporting processes, but also thinking about how you communicate your successes up that ladder. And like I said, that might not just be looking at raw traffic. It's looking at conversion rates and bounce rates and different engagement metrics that have been important, but maybe weren't always the centerpiece of how you reported on your SEO efforts. Elevating those, because I think those are going to be more important in a world where just raw traffic might be going down. So building a solid SEO foundation, and we can touch on these quickly so we get to some questions, but just with the interactive search, optimizing your Google business profile listings. If you have locations, obviously that's important, but I think if we're showing up for if we're seeing local results show up for an even wider and wider variety of queries, having these up to date, having them accurate is going to be that much more important if you're going to show up in those positions. And then product listings. Like I said, for e-commerce, we have spent so much time on, optimizing Merchant Center, optimizing our product pages, making sure they're fast, making sure they have strong usability, just because, one, they're becoming more and more frequent landing pages for those kind of top level general queries. And two, I think especially if you're selling third-party products and things like that, the differentiation a lot of times is going to kind of be user experience, because you're not going to be putting, 8 paragraphs of text necessarily on your product pages or your category pages. If you're selling the same products, the differentiator is going to be how easy is it to navigate your category pages, how easy is it to navigate your product pages, and then take action from there. Site structure. This is something that I just see becoming more important. I've been working with sites that have kind of worked around with site maps and things like that to get around having not this nested URL structure and descriptive URLs. And it just makes things so much easier, and obviously if you don't have this, it is a process of going through a migration and things like that. It's a heavy lift. But if you're thinking about building pages on your site and you're starting from scratch, having this nested URL structure, I think is just, it makes it so much easier for Google and users to understand where they are in your site, how the different pieces of content interact within your website structure. And then for me, it makes reporting so much easier quickly. If you're jumping into Search Console and you want to just know how my boot section is performing, it makes it a lot easier to filter and get to that information than if you've got all these, like, hey, every single page is one subfolder off the homepage. It's like its own directory. I just think as these rich results are pulled out, this nested URL structure that helps Google understand how content is related is going to make it easier for them to pull your pages into search results. And then finally, prioritizing user experience and site speed. All of these things have mattered for a while. We've had a mobile first algorithm, but like I said, especially on the e-commerce side, especially in like where we're seeing product pages getting more traffic, if we're both selling a pair of Adidas, it's the same Adidas. What is the differentiator between my page and your page? And that differentiator is probably going to be user experience. If we're taking like pricing and some of that stuff out of it, if we're just thinking about the page itself, and we're using, a lot of times we're using a product description that's nearly identical to what our competitor's product description is, the differentiator is going to be that user experience piece, site speed, how much users interact. All of those things send signals back that are going to be used in your ranking. And ultimately, more importantly, they're going to make it easier for your user to convert and take the action that you want them to take. And then off-page signals, just as a quick reminder, they still matter. Backlinks still matter. Brand mentions matter. Reviews, social shares, local citations. As we move to a more personalized search, I think these things are going to continue to matter. And it's not, the backlink building of the past where, hey, we're sending out 150 form letters to every website we can find or posting a bunch of spammy guest blogs. But how do we build backlink procurement and reviews and brand mentions kind of into our whole marketing scope? How do we involve our PR team in our backlink building process, trying to build those links naturally? And it's having a number of unique referring domains, and it's more about how good is this link than just the quantity of links. But I think in SEO, sometimes this gets a little forgotten. I think we all know it matters, but it is still a very key component, obviously, of establishing domain authority, trust, and ultimately visibility in the SERP. So just some key takeaways, and then we'll jump into questions. I think the big thing is, new result types, AI, of course, it's going to change the search landscape. SEO is still tremendously valuable. It's still going to have, it should still be a core part of your marketing mix moving forward. It's just going to change how we think about it. Many of the factors we optimized for in the past they still matter. It's not like it's a whole new set of crazy new search factors that are coming into play. And we have to totally throw out everything we've known about SEO to this point. It just might change how we prioritize things, how we think about them, the weight that individual signals are given, and just to keep up to date with that stuff, think about that stuff as we're moving forward. Creating well-researched authoritative content, those EAT standards, use authorship, leverage your experts. I think just being more thoughtful about our content creation and involving our whole business in that process as much as possible, as opposed to one person. And then that measuring success. It's not just about ranking for individual keywords. It's not just about traffic driving. It's driving relevant traffic that ultimately converts and takes the action we want them to take. And I think sometimes that can be a hard, it's a hard thing to communicate when it's like our traffic is down 20%. Why is our traffic down? Our SEO is failing. If we can show, sometimes maybe there are problems that are creating that traffic loss, but if we can show, hey, some of this loss is built into the way people are interacting with search and how the SERP is laid out now. But here are the ways that we're circumventing that. Here's the ways that we're still driving relevant traffic and ultimately, hopefully, driving more conversion and qualified traffic, because that's ultimately the goal at the end of the day, not just getting visitors to our site. It's getting visitors to take the actions that we want them to take.
Very cool. Thank you, Nate. Lots of information and lots of key takeaways. So really enjoyed that overview on everything. And we have a lot of questions that have come in as well. So first question that popped up is, you discussed creating quality content.
Yeah.
Getting into authorship, EAT, everything else. How do you approach creating quality content like that at scale?
Yeah, I think that's a really difficult challenge that everyone faces. I think at scale, like I said, if we can involve more people in the content creation process, that might help out and take some of the burden off that individual one person, right? So if we have a content roadmap that we're doing, are there ways that we can involve other people in the business in that process? Like I said, I think we can use AI too to kind of create an outline. I don't think you want to take that content and then just rewrite it, spin it, put it on the page. I think we can use AI tools, like the content ideation tool in Conductor I use all the time as well, just to get a good outline that makes, hey, we can hand these off to content writers. This automates some of the research process. I think that's a big part of it, of like I was saying, thinking about, okay, what is ranking for these product or these queries? If we have a way to automate that where we can create, lists of, hey, here's content to review for this. Here's the commonality questions that we're seeing on pages that are ranking for this content. That's a good way at scale to create outlines that you can hand off to content writers and then write. And we've also, I've worked with some clients that have came up with creative ways of trying to scale content by, if they have a call center, like if we're doing basic optimizations, can we train some people that have some downtime to do some of those base level optimizations that are, fairly simple. If we can teach them how to use a tool, like I was saying, Conductor, content guidance, can give them all that information in one place. Then they can take that information and go off and write or optimize, and we can do that a little bit more at scale. But yeah, it is a huge challenge. Obviously, it's not everybody's going to be able to have an editorial team of 15 people. So I think it's trying to automate the research process a little bit in terms of getting the outlines for those content, making that process really quick, so you're handing those off and you have more time to go back and write and create, and then trying to involve other people within your business in the content creation process if possible.
Very cool. Very cool. You discussed linking a little bit too at the end there. Does link building still serve a role in your SEO strategy?
It does. I think it's just a lot different than what it was. When I first started in SEO, one of the first things I did was manual link building, where I would create a piece of content and email, every mom blog or whatever it was applying to, and be like, hey, would you link to my website? And maybe our success rate was like, 3 in 100 emails I sent out. So I think the returns on that aren't very high. I think you want to think about more of it from like a natural process of like, hey, are we talking to our PR teams when we're putting out content? Are we talking to our social teams? Like, hey, we created this really great piece of content. Can you promote it? I think it's also about quality, to the quality of the links. I talked to some of my clients that have a more localized presence, like, hey, are you getting links from the Chamber of Commerce? Are you getting localized links that matter? Those outreach, that kind of manual outreach, targeted manual outreach, I think there's still a role for that, because those links are going to have a lot more value than just like the bulk scattershot approach. Or, there used to be guest blogging websites. You'd throw a blog up there, they'd throw it out on a bunch of low quality blogs. I don't think there's a role for that, but there's absolutely a role for still getting quality backlinks. I think it's just trying to build it into your natural processes with your social teams, with your PR teams. hey, can you include a link to this, in this, include a link to the page in this PR release that you're doing. Some of those things are fairly simple, but they often get overlooked.
Very good. Very good. Also, talked about clickless SERPs quite a bit. What do clickless SERPs mean for my SEO traffic? And how can I compare historical performance to what I might be getting now or may not be getting from clickless SERPs?
Yeah, totally. So the clickless SERP, what it means for your traffic is just less traffic. And I think it means something about search volume as well. So, I do a lot of using a click curve to try to estimate like traffic. If we ranked in this position for this set of keywords based on the search volume, what would our traffic be on the click-through rate? And sometimes you almost have to have that number because it's like, 50% of the queries for this, 50% of the searches on this particular query aren't generating traffic. So I have to think about, I've got 50% of the search volume is my pie to pull from a click-through rate perspective. I think what it means to comparing historical performance is you're going to have to try to make an estimate and factor that in as well. So I think it varies a lot depending on vertical. I've seen so many different numbers on how many searches are actually clickless. I've seen upwards of 50%. I've seen other studies that are like 25%. I think it really matters about what vertical you're in is going to have a pretty huge impact on what that actual figure is. But if you can try to find a number, or at least an approximation of a number there, and communicating, hey, 4 years ago, let's say 70% of these clicks were, or 70% of these searches were generating a click. Now it's 50%, and trying to apply that new ratio to traffic. So yeah, your raw traffic is going to look down, but it's, hey, we're getting actually a higher percentage of the available clicks now than we were in the past, and trying to communicate that. But yes, it does make measuring historical performance very difficult. We just have to try to use that number and kind of adjust for thinking about, what percentage of available clicks are we getting as opposed to just the raw number of clicks that we're getting.
Gotcha. And speaking of which, well, I guess AI overviews aren't necessarily clickless SERPs, right? There are the little references.
You can, but a lot would be clickless. I mean, if it's like, what's Larry Bird's birthday, or there
exactly.
are those types of queries. Yeah,
exactly. So speaking of AI overviews, what are some of the most successful tactics or tests that you've seen implemented to help sites actually show up in those overviews?
Yeah, so I think we're still getting a little bit of a hold on that just because it is relatively new. We've just in May seen it expanded out to all US users. It's not an exciting answer, but I think it does boil down to kind of the same things we think about when ranking content in general. And some of the ways that we think about ranking for quick answers in the past is my content on the page structured well? If it is an FAQ, am I using FAQ markup to mark it up? Am I using numbered lists? I think that EAT component I was talking about, do we have authorship? So, hey, we're vetting that content at a higher standard. We know we need to provide information about where it's coming from. And then I think also backlinks, domain authority, those are votes of confidence to content as well. So I think a lot of the things are similar to how we think about ranking in quick answers or ranking highly with any piece of content. I think what's really changing is what does that mean for user behavior? Like you were saying, how many of those are going to be clickless? What are the click-through rates on those links compared to, the quick answer box? It was very clear what site it was pulling from. The click-through rates were higher on those from my experience of looking at it. But yeah, I think it's a lot of those same strategies. I think we'll get a better feel for it as more time passes and we see these showing up for more queries and we're able to measure. But I think it does kind of boil down to that content quality and the signals that you're sending to vet that quality, whether it be authorship or, backlinking, those types of things.
Very cool. And speaking of content and questions and answers, Marcus asks, regarding answering questions with informational content, does including the actual question help with SEO, or is it more important to think about the question and then answer it organically?
I think I think including the question helps. In my experience of one, it helps the user if they get to your page and are actually reading the content. I think two, it does help from a language processing standpoint of the search engine understanding. So, if you're thinking about like, what is the best winter boot or something as a question, I don't think it hurts obviously to have that on the page as a heading, especially if you're trying to answer a lot of questions with one page, which I think we're going to increasingly do, right? It's, it used to be kind of that one keyword, one page. I need a page for every single one of these questions. With the way that Google understands language now and understands the relationship between topics and how they interconnect with one another, we should be trying to get one page to rank for a variety of questions and queries that pertain to one overarching topic if we can. And I think including the question on the page doesn't hurt you. But obviously you want to then answer that question organically when you're creating the actual answer for it.
When it comes to integrating AI into the content creation process, do you see any issue with AI proofreading content that's been written by an expert? Yeah, even if it tweaks some of the tone of the voice to be a little bit more objective and heavy, which a lot of LLMs do. Will search or will Google see it as AI generated, or is it still considered organic content?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. To me, just reacting, I wouldn't think of using AI or using tools to proofread your content as being AI generated content. We use spell check. It's a little different. To me, that's using AI as a tool to help you create better, user focused human written content, as opposed to using it to completely write content from scratch. With the tweaking the tone of voice, I think it probably depends a little bit on how much the language is actually changing. Like some of these AI tools are like the AI, tracking or deciphering tools are really good. Like I've taken pieces of AI written content, pretty much rewritten all, just been like, okay, they want me to write about this. I'll just rewrite this sentence. And they're still able to kind of figure out like AI wrote this content. I don't, whether it's through like the structuring of words on the page or the structuring of the content itself. So I think on that piece, I think for proofreading and things like that, I wouldn't expect that to have a huge impact. But if we're talking about like tone of voice and things like that, I think it really boils down to like, what scale do you mean? Like how much is it tweaking it? Is it changing out words? Is it completely restructuring sentences? Because I think some of these tools are pretty good at figuring out if AI played a part in the content creation or not. So, yeah.
And then last question before the top of the hour is, will pruning low quality content and or just taking it off of the site, will that have a positive effect, or is it no longer a factor when it comes to search?
I think it will have a positive impact. I think some of it may be a little bit more indirectly. Now, in the past, Google was way more manual penalty focused. I feel like I just remember instead they moved from, okay, instead of manually penalizing all these sites, we're just going to completely devalue this content. It has no value in the mix. We're not factoring it in. But I could see just by pruning low quality content, you're just sending out better signals of, hey, this is authoritative, trustworthy site. We're getting this content off the site. I mean, if you have tons of low quality content and you're a small website, like you're improving your crawl budget, like, hey, we're not wasting our crawl budget on these pages that have no value that Google's just looking at and being like, hey, we don't, we're not going to rank this. It's not high quality. So yeah, I do think pruning would have a positive impact on the site. It may just be a little different than like, hey, if you got a manual penalty and you're being asked specifically to remove links or remove content, that's going to be a little bit different than if you're proactively pruning that content. But yeah, I think there is a positive to doing that.
Nate, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it today. This is a very informative presentation. Just as a reminder, we will be sending out the deck and video as a recap for today's webinar. And if there's any questions that have come in that we haven't had a chance to get to, we're going to be shooting it over to Nate, try to get it answered and send it out in that as well. Where can folks find you online, Nate?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. If you just search my name, I think we might send out a link too. But yeah, so if you want to hit me up on LinkedIn, feel free to do that. But I really appreciate everyone's time today. Great talking. Always great to get questions. It helps me think about things differently too. So really appreciate
Outstanding.
it.
Outstanding. Very cool. And our next SEJ webinar will be next week. Same time, same channel, same day. Brought to you by Resolve, the Lord of the Links of Power. So sounds pretty dramatic. So please tune in for our webinar next week. And then Nate, thank you, and thank you to the team at Conductor for bringing this today. Really appreciate your time and everything that you brought to the table. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Have a good rest of your day, and thanks everybody. Bye-bye.